Welcome to Honest Whispers Review to Sale. On this video I'll be reviewing Hibana from Kunoichi, released in the States as Sega's Nightshade. The game is from the Shinobi world. She is part of the Sega Gas Collection Series number 2. Other characters come from Monster World 4, Golden Axe, Fighting Vipers, Phantasy Star Online, and Shining Tears. There's no designer or sculptor credited to it. It is a gashapon or minifigure. You could even consider this a mini statue because there are no points of articulation. This does come in 12 different pieces. The head comes apart 2 pieces, the 2 knives, the 2 arms, upper body, lower body, the back sword, and actually it comes with the bonus head, her masked with the little ribbons on the back. So you can see right there, there is a seam line there. You pull that apart and then put it back together where the little peg or knob, like a knob, is off the top of the neck. But as you can see, it's hard to tell where the seam lines are. And of course, if you add the base, that's basically 13 parts. I'm going to go over 5 different categories to review this. First category is design, which covers the pose and the concept of the figure. And as you can see, the pose is definitely eye-catching, very dynamic. Unfortunately, I never got to play the game Nightshade or Kunoichi, so I don't know what kind of moves she does exactly, but so I don't know if this is part of her trademark move or something like that, where she just finished like a dual wielded, slash, or she's about to start doing one. In my opinion, it looks like she just kind of finished it. It does look a bit unorthodox, but definitely unique pose. I think it has kind of like an action, and she looks kind of sexy at the same time, like a provocative pose. You can see how her left leg is basically off the ground, and it's a brilliant design because it kind of works as a counterweight to balance her upper body. That's kind of leaning so much when you really look at it. I had this over a decade basically and never had any leaning issues. I have a glass shelf case that I had displayed, and after a while I just had it stored, wrapped it nicely, secured it, and put it in a box. And as you can see, even saved a little insert and everything. So, which is kind of off the topic. But going back to the design, as you can see, very nice. I would give bonus points onto designing that as a counterweight to keep her balanced. Looks fantastic overall, from even different angles. Once again, just the way she's leaning, it just, you could see how, I mean, it really stands out compared to other poses where they're just standing or something. Not that standing still is a bad pose, but definitely this has much more dynamic look to it. So the design, I'm going to give it a perfect 10 out of 10. Next category is sculpting. Sculpting basically covers the execution of the figure itself. How much details it has, how well it's sculpted, and even molding or the casting can become an issue too. And with this, when you look at everything from the little knives, I guess the dual ninja knives, her katana on her back, details on her hair. They didn't really like sculpt like every strand or anything like that, but then they kind of like an anime look, bit simplified but works really well. Face, nose, everything's well proportioned. Her armor, costume looks perfect. And I do have to point out, this is actually, she's 4 inches tall. And with the knife, she basically comes up to like 5 inches. So it's not like a tiny figure, but it's definitely on the smaller side. And the reason why I say that, for a size this small, her like, I guess the net, like a fishnet part of her costume is all sculpted. There is no, and it's pretty consistent if you look at it. Now you can see this is where the seam line is right there, where her shoulder, armpit area, so it doesn't have a perfect lining, but either way, a lot of nice details. Anywhere that's like fishnet, like her side where her hips are, it's all like rough and rigid. Kind of reminds me of Spider-Man or something, like Spider-Woman's costume. Although I wouldn't want Spider-Man's costume looking all rigid like that. But for this ninja thing, it kind of reminds me of Naruto, some of the girls in Naruto, although they have it black. So armor on the side, legs, definitely nice. It's detailed, as you can see, and even on the back. So it looks like very nicely detailed from what the game is, or how she looks in the game. And going back to the extra head, you can see how it has 2 little ribbons. And then just the side is pretty much the same. Sorry, let me kind of, oops. There it is. So it is symmetrical. So with the sculpting, I don't see much flaws. I mean, the details for this size is stunning. It's amazing. Even the fingers in that clenched fist, nicely proportioned. It doesn't look off weird like some little kid trying to make an ashtray out of clay. So even the costume right there. So the sculpting, I have to give it a perfect score. There's absolutely no flaws, and the details it has is amazing. So sculpting, I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10. Next category is painting, which is pretty much self-explanatory. For this size figure, absolutely great details on the painting. Not too many flaws at all, especially when you look far away, at least from 1 foot away. Yeah, it pretty much looks like a perfectly painted figure. But once again, when you see much more closely, and this is very much nitpicking. Now, that part, the red, doesn't really line up. Of course, that's where it is separated. You can see some white over costume, kind of going over the red part of the armor where it sticks out. from the top right there, and even the top of right here where the boots are starting. So the edge, it does tend to have some white on it. I think it would look cleaner if they could have kept everything red, but then the lines are pretty much straight, so it makes it more unnoticeable. If it was like squiggly lines, maybe slightly like right here on the upper left, then it's a bit more noticeable. But of course that squiggly line has to be on the angle where it's harder to see, especially right here. If you put in this angle, can't see it at all. Eyes are very nicely painted. Lips, face, everything. But I'm gonna be straight honest here again. If you look it's really hard to tell, but if you look at it real closely, and I like symmetry and everything, so it's not that much of a problem. But you can see that the right eye, her right eye, is slightly larger than her left eye. Or you could say her left eye is slightly smaller. Sorry, hard to kind of keep it focused right there. So it's not that much of a difference. And you know, there's many people out there in real life who kind of squints one eye or something like that. So it's not. And again, this is like looking like real up close. So you can't really tell unless you're kind of looking at like that. Little details on the costume, the sword, those little line right there, that seam line, very nicely painted. Like, I mean, it's a thin black line, but it's straight. That's what I like about it. On the back here, of course, going back the way her costume is detailed. Now, can't really tell, and it's hard to tell here too, because it's hard to capture on camera. But the right line, that right seam line, going over just on the upper part, it's the paint looks slightly, how you say, that it's not as dark. And I've seen something like this before. It looks like maybe they had a paintbrush, and then after painting few lines, you know, the paint might have been kind of like running out, so it was time to kind of dip the paint again. Not a huge difference, but just wanted to point that out. Now look at the painting on the knife. Definitely looks, I mean, for the size that it is, it's like a tiny little knife, and very nicely painted, very consistent. Initially when I looked at this from afar, I was thinking, wow, this is basically like perfect painting. And only when I started looking up close like this, I started seeing those minor flaws. And one thing I want to point out too is that her costume, the red and then the skin and all that stuff, it's matte finish basically. But her white paint, the white costume, the paint, has a nice shiny gloss to it, which is one of the reasons why I thought, you know, this was like such a great piece, because the costume, it kind of gives you that like a spandex or latex look to it. So very nice and realistic touch to it. You can see from any angle, really well proportioned and everything. You know, that's going back to the sculpting category, but really there's so much to look at, and this is displayable pretty much 360 degrees, especially because the way she leans. I mean, it's, if you got sick of, you know, this way, I mean, you could even kind of pose it this way. Not many people, like, who don't see this won't realize, okay, you know, like, that looks cool, and all of a sudden when they see it where she's leaning like this much, it's kind of like, whoa, that like, it really does stand out even for a small piece. So definitely a attention getter. So once again, when you look at all the paint and everything, very symmetrical, lots of straight lines, not many squiggly lines. The only consistent mistake that I see, and and it is consistent because almost every area it's like that. On that armor part where it's kind of out, but again, because of the straight lines, it's hard to notice and still has a nice effect to it. And as you can see, her hair, there's a slight skin color on where her hair is, looks like, but not that much. I've seen worse actually that was on sale on eBay, so which I had questioned. So going back on painting, it is close to perfect, but as you can see, there are some mistakes, and you know, 10 is for a perfect score. So I'm still gonna give it a high score, a 9 out of 10 on the painting. Fourth category is value. I'll go this pretty fast since I took so much time on the other categories. As you can see, I forgot how much this was, but I realized when I looked at this, original price, at least the Japanese price, is 200 yen. Of course, with the dollar exchange back then, yen was a lot more expensive. Nowadays, it's kind of like a straight exchange. 200 is pretty much like $2. But it was an import, so I did buy this at around, I can't remember for sure, it was around like $4.99, maybe $5.99. So definitely a good deal. Now when I saw this on eBay, I saw 3 listings. Basically one around like 15, that was the lowest, 20, and then 26. They all claim to be new. All 3 are from Hong Kong, which, not that there's anything bad about Hong Kong, but you know, even for something like this, you do have to be careful about counterfeits or anything like that. I'm not gonna really judge whether it is or not without knowing the details. I did kind of compare in pictures. For me, I thought this looked a lot cleaner. And one thing I wanted to notice or point out, this other mask, I never used this mask before. So if you look at this right now, the way the ribbons, I use my shadow right here, the way the ribbons are going kind of in the same direction, I mean, that looks kind of good. Now the one I saw in the pictures that was for sale right now, it was like going opposite directions. So rather than going from, you know, like this way down, the last one was going this way, so it's kind of curved the other way. So do be careful. And because of that, I mean, it is an old one. It could have been a lot more expensive, but she is not really a well-known character. Not many people know her, and even for me, I never played the game, so I don't have like a fan base like connection to her, this character. But bottom line, she looks cool and awesome. So for me, even without knowing much details about the character, still one of my favorite pieces in my collection. So because of the value, I'm going to give it a, I guess a decent score. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10 on the value, which comes to overall, because of the nice design, everything, and I mean, it's just a really nice piece for what it is. So I'm probably gonna give, or actually not probably, I am gonna give this a 9 out of 10 on the overall score. So this is a review to sale. I will be posting this on a few different apps, selling apps for like locally, and I will probably post this on eBay as well. I'll probably start it at around $20 because this, as you can see, the condition is pretty much near mint. I took well care of it, like pretty much I do with everything that I have. Even the base right there, you can see the shine, the reflection to it. So at least for me, you know, I'm hoping right now I could probably, I was hoping something like this would be much more higher in value. someone similar in comparison would be Taki from Soul Calibur. Due to her immense popularity, like her old Gashapon can go for nearly like 30 something dollars to 50. Unfortunately, Hibana doesn't have that kind of aftermarket value, but still, I think due to the nice quality and everything, which is why I'm giving it an overall 9 score, I will be listing this at around $20. So we'll go from there. Hopefully things work out for me and the buyer, who would be interested. And again, yeah, I hate to let this go, but sometimes you do have to let it go for whatever the reason may be, financially or for space, or just to move on. So to recap, design, I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10. Sculpting, 10 out of 10. Painting, 9 out of 10. Value, 7 out of 10. And overall, 9 out of 10. Thank you for watching. Until next time.